My parents mocked me for saving money while spoiling my sister, so I moved out quietly and left them facing the consequences they never expected. I'm a 26-year-old guy, and sometimes I feel like I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm worth the space I take up in my own family. Growing up, responsibility wasn't something I chose, it was assigned to me like a job title I never applied for. While other kids played after school, I was the one washing dishes, helping my dad with bills, or fixing things around the house because you're the practical one. I didn't think much of it back then. I thought being useful meant being valued. It took me years to realize there's a massive difference between the two. Lily, my younger sister, never had that issue. She floated through life like someone who believed the universe would always catch her. And honestly, my parents encouraged it. If she wanted something, she got it. If she made a mistake, they covered it. If I asked for anything, even something simple, I got a lecture about being grateful and learning to sacrifice. It felt like my entire identity was built on being the son who never needed anything. I worked overtime shifts, skipped nights out with coworkers, and tracked every dollar in a spreadsheet like my life depended on it. My dream was simple: buy my own place one day so I didn't have to feel trapped in a house where I was treated like a backup generator. But every time I saved a little more, my parents made fun of me. "You're so cheap," my mom would laugh. "Live a little. You're young." My dad would shake his head and say, "You take life way too seriously. No woman wants a man who counts pennies." Lily would roll her eyes and call me Grandpa. They didn't understand that saving wasn't fear, it was survival. It was self-respect. And deep down, I think they hated that I had something they couldn't control. I just didn't know then that their resentment would turn into something much worse. Lily lived like the world was her personal amusement park, and my parents acted like her cheerleaders instead of her guardians. She'd wake up at noon, scroll through social media, and talk about her stress while planning weekend trips with friends she barely knew. Every time she showed off a new outfit or gadget, my parents would beam with pride, like her purchases were some kind of achievement. Meanwhile, I'd come home from double shifts exhausted, only to hear my mom say, "Why don't you try having fun like your sister? You're too young to be this uptight." It hurt in ways I never said out loud. The worst part was the financial pressure disguised as family responsibility. Anytime Lily overspent, usually on clothes, salons, or parties, my parents would knock on my bedroom door like debt collectors with emotional manipulation as their currency. "Can you help your sister this month?" my mom would ask, voice soft but loaded. My dad would add, "You make good money. Don't be selfish." If I hesitated, Lily would sigh dramatically in the background, as if my savings had personally ruined her life. I remember one night vividly. I was budgeting at my desk, trying to figure out how to stretch my paycheck, when Lily barged into my room wearing a new designer jacket. "Do you have $200 I can borrow?" she asked casually, like she was asking me to pass the salt. When I said no, she scoffed and muttered, "Whatever. You act like you're poor on purpose." My parents, hearing the exchange, scolded me for embarrassing her. It was like saying no was a crime. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that toxic family dynamics somehow smooth out when everyone grows up. But deep down, a quiet resentment was building inside me. A resentment I tried to swallow, but it stayed lodged in my chest like a stone. And I had no idea that this pattern of entitlement and guilt-tripping was only the beginning of something far, far worse. My parents invited me to a special family dinner, and for a brief, stupid moment, I let myself believe it might actually be something positive. I remember standing in front of the mirror before leaving, telling myself, maybe they finally want to acknowledge something I've done. But the second I walked into the restaurant, I felt an uneasiness settle in my stomach. Lily was already at the table, laughing while scrolling through her phone, and my parents looked strangely excited, not warm, not appreciative, just eager. I ignored the feeling, sat down, and told myself to stop overthinking. Dinner started normally enough, but halfway through, the tone shifted. My mom leaned back in her chair and said loudly, "You know, it's funny how seriously he takes saving money. Like he's preparing for the apocalypse or something." Lily snorted into her drink and added, "Yeah, he acts like having fun is a sin. It's kinda pathetic." My dad joined in with a chuckle. "We raised him better than this. He's so tight he squeaks when he walks." Their voices felt amplified in the crowded restaurant, each insult echoing in my skull. I tried to laugh it off at first, but something inside me cracked when Lily said, "He's probably going to retire alone with all his little spreadsheets." She said it with a grin, an ugly, mocking grin, like she was proud of how deeply the words would cut. My mom nodded in agreement, adding, "Exactly. Who wants a guy who counts every cent? Women want excitement, not, whatever this is." She waved her hand dismissively toward me. I felt my throat tighten. My food tasted like nothing. My hands shook under the table. I wasn't being teased, I was being humiliated for sport. And as I sat there, heat burning behind my eyes, I realized this wasn't just a bad moment. This was the moment everything shifted. The moment something inside me turned cold and quiet. The moment I knew something in my life had to change, fast. I didn't sleep the night after that dinner. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every laugh, every mocking glance. It felt like something heavy had settled on my chest, making it hard to breathe. For years, I told myself I was overreacting, that families joke, families tease, families misunderstand each other. But what happened that night wasn't teasing. It was cruelty dressed as comedy, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. The next morning, my mom knocked on my door like nothing had happened. "We're going grocery shopping, do you need anything?" she asked casually, not a trace of remorse in her voice. Lily shouted from the hallway, "Get him some coupons. He loves those." They laughed. And I just stood there, feeling the last bit of emotional numbness turn into something sharper, resolve. I waited until the house was empty, then opened my laptop and started searching for apartments. I didn't tell a soul. Not a friend, not a coworker, and definitely not my family. I scrolled through listings with a level of calmness that scared me a little, because it felt like I wasn't just browsing, I was escaping. Every picture of a small studio or one-bedroom place felt like a glimpse of freedom, even if it wasn't perfect or spacious or glamorous. I started packing slowly, discreetly, like someone preparing for a quiet departure in the middle of the night. A drawer here, a box there. I tucked things into bags and slid them under my bed so no one would notice. Every time I taped a box shut, it felt like I was closing a chapter one should have left years ago. But leaving wasn't just logistically hard, it was emotionally brutal. This was the home where I grew up, where I learned responsibility, where I taught myself independence because no one else would. And yet it also felt like a place that had been draining the life out of me for years. As I folded the last of my clothes into a bag, a single thought pulsed through me, steady and undeniable. If I didn't leave soon, I was going to lose myself completely. And they had no idea I was already halfway out the door. Over the next few days, I tried to keep my distance, moving around the house like a quiet ghost. But the more I pulled back, the more invasive my parents became, as if they sensed something slipping out of their hands. My mom started asking oddly specific questions. "Why are you leaving so early? Why are you home so late? Why are you locking your door?" She never used to care about my schedule, but now she hovered like a hall monitor guarding a prison hallway. It made my skin crawl. Lily was even worse. She began poking around my room under the guise of looking for clothes or borrowing something, even though she had everything she wanted. One afternoon, I caught her tugging at the handle of my desk drawer. "What are you doing?" I snapped. She rolled her eyes. "Relax. I needed a hair tie." "You're so dramatic." Her tone was syrupy sweet, but her eyes held something different, curiosity mixed with suspicion. My dad, who usually stayed out of emotional matters unless he wanted something, suddenly took an interest too. He'd watch me when I walked past the living room, studying me like he was trying to decode a puzzle. "You've been acting strange," he said one evening, his voice low. "Is something going on?" There was no concern in his tone, just irritation. The kind someone has when they think their convenience is being disrupted. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. Every hour in that house felt heavier, tighter. Even simple tasks, doing laundry, packing my lunch, taking out the trash, were scrutinized. Lily snickered every time I walked by, as if she knew something was up and wanted to push until I snapped. But snapping wasn't part of my plan. Leaving quietly was. Still, their sudden obsession with my behavior made everything 10 times harder. I found myself packing at night, tiptoeing around so no floorboard would creak, hiding boxes behind furniture. And each new intrusion, each question, each laugh made one thing painfully clear. They weren't just mocking me anymore. They were trying to keep control. And they were about to cross a line that would change everything. The line they crossed came on a random Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that should have meant nothing, but ended up detonating everything. I came home early from work because my shift got cut short, and the house was quiet except for faint rustling coming from my room. At first, I thought maybe a window was open, but the second I turned the corner, I froze. Lily was inside my room, kneeling in front of my desk with my drawers pulled open, papers scattered around her like she was sifting through evidence. My heart dropped into my stomach so fast I felt nauseous. "What the hell are you doing?" I barked, louder than I intended. She jerked up, eyes wide, but instead of looking guilty, she smirked. "You really should lock this better," she said, holding one of my bank statements in her hand like a winning lottery ticket. "Give me that," I snapped, stepping forward, but she pulled it back. "Wow," she said, voice dripping with satisfaction, "you've been hiding a lot, haven't you?" Before I could stop her, she bolted out of the room, waving the paper dramatically as she ran down the hall. Within seconds, my parents came storming out of the kitchen, alarmed by Lily's performance. "Why didn't you tell us you had this much saved?" my mom demanded, snatching the statement from her. My dad's eyes lit up, not with pride, but with calculation. "You've been sitting on all this money while your sister struggles." Struggles? Lily hadn't struggled a single day in her life. They all cornered me in the hallway like a pack closing in on prey. I tried to explain that it was my money, my savings, for my future. But they twisted it instantly, turning my sacrifice into selfishness, my discipline into betrayal. "You should have used some of this to help the family," my dad snapped. "You owe us." Oh. That word burned. In that moment, as their voices layered over each other, angry, entitled, relentless, I realized something chilling. They didn't want me to stay. They wanted control of my life, and now, of my money. And they weren't going to let this go without a fight. I thought the confrontation over my savings was the worst of it, but it turned out to be just the warm-up. That night, my parents called a family meeting, which was really just code for another session of them cornering me emotionally. I sat on the couch, tense, while they paced like lawyers preparing for trial. Lily lounged across from me, arms folded, smirking like this was all some kind of reality show featuring my downfall. The air felt thick, like the house itself was holding its breath for what was coming. My mom started with a sigh that sounded rehearsed. "Your sister needs a reliable car," she said, "and since you've been hiding money from us, you should help her." My dad jumped in immediately. "Not help, contribute. It's time you step up." I stared at them, stunned. "Why is it my responsibility to buy her a car?" Lily pouted dramatically. "I can't keep borrowing Dad's truck. It's embarrassing. Don't you want me to be safe?" It wasn't about safety. It was about entitlement, pure and simple. When I said no, the atmosphere in the room snapped like a rubber band pulled too tight. My mom's voice rose instantly. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." My dad jabbed a finger toward my chest. You think hoarding money makes you better than us? And Lily, always the performer, wiped a fake tear and whispered, "You're ruining my life." The words hit me like punches, not because they were true, but because I finally saw them for what they were, manipulation sharpened into a weapon. They weren't a family asking for help. They were a unit demanding obedience, trying to guilt-trip me into funding Lily's lifestyle. Something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not fear. Just clarity. A painful, electric kind of clarity. I realized, sitting there surrounded by accusations and entitlement, that none of this would ever stop. Not unless I stopped it. And in that moment, one quiet decision formed in the back of my mind, a decision that would change everything. Once that family meeting ended, I knew there was no coming back from it. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling in the dim glow of my phone screen, the same thought looping through my mind like a warning siren: if I don't get out now, I never will. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm, almost numbness, like my emotions had been packed away just like the boxes hidden under my bed. I moved through the house quietly, avoiding eye contact, avoiding conversation, avoiding anything that might set them off. My plan was simple: move out without a fight, without permission, and without letting them manipulate me into staying. I waited for the perfect moment, Saturday morning, when Lily would be out shopping and my parents would be running errands. The second the front door closed behind them, I sprang into motion. I pulled all the hidden boxes from under my bed, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it shook my ribs. I packed the last of my clothes, my toiletries, and the documents Lily had almost stolen from me. Every zip of a bag felt deafening, like the house was listening. I made trip after trip to my car, each one faster than the last, terrified they'd return earlier than planned. At one point, I dropped a box and it burst open on the driveway, old photos spilling onto the concrete. For a moment, I froze, staring at baby pictures, school portraits, memories that felt distant and hollow. Then I gathered them quickly, shoving them back into the box. Nostalgia wasn't going to save me. Nostalgia had kept me stuck for too long. Inside, I placed my house key on the kitchen table, right in the center, where it couldn't be missed. No note. No explanation. No goodbye. They didn't deserve any more pieces of me. When I finally slid into the driver's seat, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sit still for a minute. The house looked smaller from the outside, like it had shrunk now that I wasn't carrying its weight anymore. As I drove away, a strange mix of fear and freedom washed over me, like stepping off a cliff and learning to fly on the way down. But deep in my chest, I knew one thing for sure: the real storm hadn't even started yet. I didn't even make it halfway to my new apartment before my phone started buzzing non-stop. First it was my mom, 6 missed calls back to back, then my dad, then Lily. I ignored every vibration, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Part of me expected this reaction, but another part of me wasn't prepared for how fast it all escalated. It was like the minute they realized I wasn't in my room, they lost their minds. And as the notifications piled up, a sick mix of anger and fear twisted in my stomach. When I finally reached my new place, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, listening to voicemail after voicemail. My mom's voice cracked with outrage: "How dare you leave without telling us? Do you have any idea how disrespectful this is?" My dad's message was colder: "Get back here. Right now. We need to talk." Then Lily: "You seriously abandoned us? You ruined everything. I hope you're happy." It was all the same tone, entitlement disguised as concern. By evening, the messages shifted from angry to desperate. My mom cried into the phone, saying, "You're breaking this family." My dad said he just wanted to understand why I did something so extreme. And Lily sent voice notes of her sobbing dramatically, insisting I had betrayed her. If I didn't know them so well, I might have believed the theatrics. But I knew what this was: panic from losing access to the one resource they never expected to lose, me. I turned my phone off and lay on the bare mattress, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan in my new apartment. The silence felt foreign, like stepping into a new world where I no longer existed solely to fix other people's chaos. But as freeing as it was, there was a heaviness too, an ache I couldn't shake. Leaving wasn't the end. It was the beginning of their unraveling, and I could already feel the backlash gathering like thunder on the horizon. I thought the silence after I blocked them would bring me peace, but all it did was give my mind more room to wander. I kept replaying the messages, the yelling, the guilt, wondering if maybe I had gone too far. Some nights I'd sit in my new place, bare walls, mattress on the floor, takeout containers stacked in the corner, and wonder if I was the villain they painted me to be. The loneliness hit harder than I expected. Freedom feels different when it's quiet, too quiet. And in that quiet, doubt can feel louder than any screaming voice. But then the updates started trickling in. A family friend texted me out of nowhere, "Is everything okay at home? Your parents seem stressed." I didn't reply, but the message lingered in my mind like a warning. A week later, another mutual acquaintance messaged me saying my parents were having financial issues. At first, I brushed it off. My parents always acted like they were untouchable, untouchably generous with Lily, untouchably confident in their illusions. But then I heard the details. They had been drowning in debt for months, credit cards maxed out, loans overdue, late notices piling up. They'd been covering Lily's lifestyle on money they didn't have, funneling all their resources into keeping up the facade of a perfect, spoiled princess daughter. Without my contributions, without my quiet paycheck padding their reckless spending, everything collapsed. They cancelled Lily's gym membership. Then her salon appointments. Then her weekend trips. And when she demanded explanations, the fights between them became explosive. A neighbor mentioned Lily screaming on the front lawn one night, yelling that everything was falling apart and blaming my parents for not managing things better. My parents, predictably, blamed me. Said I abandoned them, that I forced this chaos by leaving. Listening to these stories secondhand, guilt punched me in the chest, harder than I wanted to admit. I sat in my dim apartment, head in my hands, whispering to myself, did I break them? Did I cause this? But deep down, beneath the fear and doubt, a quiet truth stirred. I hadn't caused their downfall. I had simply stopped holding it up. And they were only beginning to feel the weight of their own choices. The knock on my apartment door came on a gray Sunday afternoon, the kind of weather that already makes you feel vulnerable. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened it and saw my parents standing there, looking nothing like the confident, mocking people I'd grown up with, my stomach dropped. My dad's shoulders were slumped, and my mom's eyes were puffy and red. Lily wasn't with them, which instantly told me things at home were worse than I imagined. For a moment, none of us said anything, we just stared at each other, suspended in this strange, tense silence. Then my mom stepped forward. "Please, can we talk?" she whispered, her voice thin. They walked inside without waiting for an invitation, sitting stiffly on my couch like they didn't know how to exist in a space that wasn't theirs. My dad rubbed his hands together anxiously. "We're struggling," he finally admitted. "Bills, debts, we need help." My mom added quickly, "Just a little support. Just until we get back on our feet. We thought we could depend on you." That sentence, that assumption, ignited something sharp inside me. For years, I said quietly, "You didn't depend on me. You used me." My mom flinched like I had slapped her. "We're family," she protested weakly. "Family helps each other. Family doesn't mock their kid for saving money," I replied. "Family doesn't guilt-trip someone into paying for things they can't afford." My dad's voice hardened. "You're being dramatic. We just need you to step up." There it was, the real them peeking through the cracks. I felt the final piece of resentment slide into place like a lock clicking shut. "I'm not your safety net anymore," I said. "I'm done sacrificing my future because you can't manage your present." My mom's face crumpled. My dad stared at me like he didn't recognize me at all. They realized, in that moment, that I wasn't bending this time. They left quietly, defeated, carrying the weight of a truth they never expected to face. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. And I never would be again. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, the door still vibrating faintly from the force of their exit. For a long time, I didn't move. I just stared at the floor, replaying the confrontation in my head, feeling the aftershocks ripple through me. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. It wasn't revenge, either. It was something quieter, something heavier, like the emotional equivalent of finally exhaling after holding my breath for years. Over the next few months, things changed in ways I never imagined. My life, for once, felt like it belonged to me. I found a routine in the silence, morning coffee by the window, late-night walks through the quiet streets near my building, music playing softly as I unpacked the last of my boxes. I started making new friends, letting myself laugh without worrying about being judged or belittled. The freedom felt unreal at first, like I was trespassing in a life I wasn't sure I deserved. Meanwhile, their world continued to crumble. Word spread slowly through friends and neighbors. My parents had to downsize, sell off belongings, take on extra work. Lily, stripped of her financial safety net, finally had to get a real job. She struggled, hard. The girl who once bragged about never needing to lift a finger now complained about customers, managers, responsibilities. She even reached out once, sending a message that said, "You left at the worst time. You abandoned us." I didn't respond. Because the truth was clear, I didn't abandon them. I walked away from a role I should never have been forced into. One evening, months later, I sat on the balcony of my small apartment, watching the city lights flicker like tiny, distant promises. For the first time in years, I felt safe inside my own skin. I felt free. My future no longer felt like a burden I had to carry for everyone else. And in that quiet moment, I realized something powerful: I didn't need to destroy them to reclaim my life. Their consequences were never my responsibility, just the truth they had been avoiding for far too long.